So we thought this would be a good opportunity to take advantage of. We're going to do like a walkthrough of a Precision 23 and point out some of the things that make it more user-friendly but ultimately more capable. So we've been out sailing around for the past couple days. We're here on the Chesapeake. We're tied to a dock here in Smith Island, but we anchored out last night here in Smith Island, and we came down from yesterday. We left Tillman Island. It's a little 50-mile nautical mile run down to here, not that big of a deal. But during runs like that, you do encounter wind, you do encounter lots of stuff, so you need your boat kind of tuned up if you're planning on having a good time or ultimately a good confidence building experience. So we thought it would be a good opportunity to do a walkthrough while we're actually using the boat, and that way it would help better explain some of the reasons why we did some of the things we did. So anyways, let's go ahead and get underway.
I turn crazy. Wild and away. The ocean was angry. Foaming at the mouth.
is our Precision 23 corner kitchen. My territory. So this is the original alcohol stove that came with the boat. It is great for when you're going downwind or you're anchored out, but it doesn't gimbal. And so anything you put in here, if your boat's heeled over, it's going to spill out. It's not good for moving. So in order to solve that problem, we've installed a C-swing stove. This is great because it can move in any direction. So it'll always level out, so nothing inside that pot is spilling. Great, what a relief. Ooh, somebody who cooks and then when you're moving. All right, so another improvement we've made. In a kitchen, you want to be able to see what you have, you need organization, and you need to set something down and not have it go anywhere. So we have made this little piece of equipment right here. As you can see everything in there. It's organized. I know where it is and it's not going anywhere. What a relief when you are at sea. So these are just a couple of the improvements we've made to the kitchen. So let's take a look at what else we've done to the boat.
Okay, so a few more things that we've done to the inside of our boat here. When you're sailing, your boat is heeling over and it's thrashing viciously. And there's a term we've all heard 1,000 times when it comes to sailing, and that's the term ship shape. And the reason why that term is so widely used is because it's very important whenever you're out sailing and your boat is heeling over and thrashing viciously. That is a rough situation, hard to deal with, and adds a lot of stress on its own. But if you add the element of all of your gear laying in the floor and tipped over sideways or spilling, that makes the whole situation 1,000 times worse. So what we have done to deal with that is we've made these lee cloths right here that you can see. Now, this is originally where it was. We've added a lee cloth to hold all our gear and keep it in there well safe. We put pockets in here and everything. We have them here, and we have them over here on the other side as well. And so with these, like, you can just put unlimited amounts of everything that you would ever need, whatever your personal preference is, and it doesn't fall out. And even if the boat's heeled well over, like almost 90 degrees, the boat's heeled parallel, a mast parallel with the water, the gear still doesn't fall out of there. So that is huge, and it's not very much or a large investment of time or material, but it just brings so much value when you're kind of extended cruising a small boat like this. Another thing we did is we added lee cloths to the bunks. So we have these lee cloths here to the bunks, and they're on both sides. This one's just underneath here. And so when you're not using them, you just tuck them under there. And when you are using them, you just tie them up here. And this allows you to sleep safely. Well, as you can see, somebody's sleeping there right now. But this allows you to sleep safely and also position your weight on the high side of the boat when you're in a good wind, or if you're going upwind. If you're going downwind, it doesn't really matter. So this is huge. This brings a lot of comfort. However, to put these lee cloths in, it was fairly easy, but we did change one thing. Up here they have these 1/4-20 stainless steel bolts that come through. This holds the fair leads for the jib sheets to run through. And we took off every so many of them, and we put on an eye nut, a stainless steel eye nut right there. And that stainless steel eye nut is what we attach our lee cloth to. But at the same time, there is another benefit to putting these stainless steel eye nuts on. We can run this line through them, and that makes a grab rail. So when you're at sea, you can hang onto this grab rail. It also helps you climb in and out of your lee cloth, and you can hang diapers on them when you're at sea to dry out all of your diapers. So these lee cloths and these grab rails are huge. It adds a lot of stability and a lot of value, ultimately just bringing your confidence level up and allowing you to know that you can comfortably take on bigger challenges. So anyways, let's take a look at some of the other things we've done. Okay, so this whole video we're making while we're at sea. Now it's fairly mild conditions right now, but we're both out, she's filming and I'm talking, and we're able to do that because we're under autopilot 100% of the time when we're at sea. Sailors who sail far know that you cannot go to sea thinking that you're going to steer your boat the whole time. That's absolutely ridiculous. That's old Popeye the Sailor Man talk, thinking that you're going to steer your boat, hand steer it the whole time. Nobody does that. So there's another common, I don't know, misunderstanding that thinking autopilots only bring value to bigger boats. That's absolutely not true. Autopilots bring value to all boats. So let's go out and take a look at our autopilot that we're using right now and we use all the time, and we'll show you how we have it set up. So this is a, I'm trying to stay close because we don't have a microphone. So this is a tiller pilot. And these tiller pilots are fairly inexpensive. This one probably 400, 500 bucks or something like that. And they last 1,000 years and they bring $1 million worth of value. So the first thing you should do with your Precision is go get one and put it on your small boat, and it'll just bring so much value. Ours is set up not like anyone else's is set up, but so whenever I install a tiller pilot on a small boat, I don't like just randomly drilling holes, because drilling holes all through the boat depreciates the value of the boat. And especially if those holes were drilled by someone who is not all that skilled, it kind of ruins the boat for the next guy. So the way we've installed our Autopilot is not invasive at all. We've laminated up this arch piece of wood right here. And this arch piece of wood ties from this one side of the stern rail over to the other stern rail. And so that holds our Autopilot right here. And the main reason for doing it this way is because we have this block right here. You notice that there's holes. These holes are spaced out every so often right through here. We're in the center hole now because we're kind of going neutrally off the wind right now. But when the weather gets up, these different holes, and I've never seen this on any other boat, but this is what allows your tiller pilot to become 5 times more capable than if you don't install it this way. So when the weather gets up, you end up carrying a certain degree of cant to your rudder. So that automatically puts your tiller pilot at a disadvantage if you're mounted center. But if you go ahead and charge your Autopilot in the direction that's to its advantage, it makes the Autopilot 5 times stronger. And so this is from personal experience, and we've used tiller pilots on all kinds of different boats, but having the different holes to mount it in is an essential thing if you're planning on sailing in heavy weather, or really sailing and depending on your Autopilot at all. If you mount it center, it makes it not very capable. Works great, and you should still have one if that's the only option you have, but it's nice to have this upgraded option of the different holes to select. Anyways, Autopilot's essential, and so I've heard so many different times people say, where we sail, there you see people not being very successful, and so they're always asking us questions like, oh, how do you do this, or how can you sail so far on your little boat, or this or that. And so we make suggestions such as you should get an Autopilot, and we hear, oh, well, I just use a piece of rope to tie my tiller off. And it's things like that are the reason why they're not able to sail very far. So a piece of rope does not, absolutely under no circumstance, replace an Autopilot. And so, and another thing is you'll have those tiller tamer things that, like, where the rope runs through and a little tiller tamer. That's like the first piece of equipment you should get rid of on your boat. Anyways, I think I'm kind of on a rant right now. But Autopilot is really, really important because it allows you to comfortably go around and tuck reefs. And it allows you to take a nap and get rest. It allows you, even on a Sunday sail when you're coming back in and it's super slack and there's not a lot of wind and you just want to, like, take down your sail and put your sail cover on when you're motoring back into your slip. There's just countless reasons why Autopilots can bring a ton of value and ultimately boost your confidence and just give you a more secure, empowered feeling when you're at sea. So I can't say enough about it, and that's why we spent so much time on this particular piece of equipment. Anyways, we'll move on to the next thing. So another thing that's absolute essential on a boat, things that boost your confidence and make your boat a lot safer, are jack lines. And that is another thing that's kind of like a myth or just misunderstanding, is that you should only wear a harness on a big boat. You can drown just as easy on a small boat as you can on a big boat. So the basic rule of thumb is when you're using an Autopilot, you should definitely use jack lines and a harness. It makes it way, way safer. So when you're sailing, you're tired and you need to maintain your rest, especially on longer trips and stuff like that. So when you're autopiloting and somebody is sleeping, if the person out on deck doesn't wear their harness, that's incredibly disrespectful to the person down below, because the person down below is always worried. Do they have their tether on? Do they have their harness? Do they have their tether? Do they have their harness? So you always have to make sure to definitely wear your harness and definitely wear, clip in to make it safe. Otherwise, you can fall off your boat and drown. And this doesn't just apply to long, romantic voyages. This applies to sailing out around the Mark on Sunday and back. You don't have to be 200 miles offshore to drown. All you have to do is fall off your boat at any time and your boat will sail away. And it's either going to be really, really embarrassing or life-threatening. So you can see how we have our jack line set up. They tie from the stern and they run all the way up to the bow. And this allows us to comfortably just maneuver and walk around and do whatever we need to do. Because on a small boat, you're always doing sail changes and reefing, and so you can see we have full access to the whole boat the way we have ours set up. So that is another thing that brings a ton of value. But anyways, let's keep looking around. We'll show you a few more things. Okay, so how we make a living, where our income comes from, is working on sailboats. And so more often than not, when I'm on somebody's boat and their reef system is basically non-existent, and that is a good way to ensure absolute zero confidence. When you're out and you can't reef, you always feel like you're at the mercy of the wind and you are out of control, and it just feels terrible. That's the opposite of what you're trying to achieve when you go sailing. You want to build confidence. So a very, very important piece of your whole boat that can help you achieve that confidence is your reef system, and understanding how it works and knowing how to use it in serious conditions, because you don't need it when it's light out. You need it when it's really heavy weather. So anyways, our reef systems on all our boats work the same way, but on this boat it works, our reef lines, you have a first and second reef line that pulls up through the leech of your sail through cheek blocks on the boom. All reef lines are the same there on all those. No big deal. You already know how that works. But the one thing that makes our system a little bit different is on most boats, they sort of suggest that you're supposed to use this silly little ram's horn thing here. And that little ram's horn thing doesn't work that good. So if you try to put a reef in, you pull your halyard down and then you try to slip the little eye over it and it's falling off, and then you're pulling it back up and it doesn't really work, and you're trying to get halyard tension just by pulling on your halyard. That doesn't work, especially not in high wind. And then if you go to the second reef barely reaches down here, and it's more awkward. Then what do you do with the first one? So that doesn't really work. But if you try to use it and you don't know better, it robs you of your confidence. And so what we've done, and the point of this video is to show you what we've done. So we have this rig right here. It's a simple little purchase rig that runs to a proper little hook. And when we're not reefed, this works as our Cunningham or our downhaul. And so let's take a look up the mainsail, and I want to show you how important it is to have authority over your halyard tension. You have to have authority over the halyard tension in light air and in heavy wind. So whenever you tuck a reef, you still need authority over your halyard tension. So let's look up our mainsail and we'll see the draft and how wrinkly the luff is right here and how loose it is. And look at these lines and you'll see. Now I'm going to tighten up on our downhaul right here, and you're going to see them change. See how much better that looks? Look at that foil improvement, the draft. See, look, bad, good, bad, good. So the draft of your mainsail is like gears on a bicycle. If you don't understand how to use them, the people who do understand are just going to be outperforming you. So it's important to know that. But a simple little thing like having control of your halyard tension, it just goes so far. And you need control of your halyard tension in light air, and you need control of your halyard tension in heavy wind, in heavy conditions after you've reefed. And so that's why we use one of these. We don't use that silly little ram's horn. We use just a simple purchase system like this for our downhaul and our first and our second reef. And so in any conditions, we still have authority over our halyard tension. So this might not seem like much, but it is a lot, and that's why I took a little bit of time on this topic. Anyways, let's move on. So you can see what we have here. We got this little purple piece of string that doesn't look like much, but this is a good example of something that doesn't look like much bringing a lot of value. So that piece of string is just a loop of line that runs through the cleat, and it hangs there all the time. And whenever you're tucking a reef or raising or lowering your mainsail, you have to do something with all of the leftover line. So on all of our situations, on all of our boats, that's what we do. And you can see that comes off easy and it goes on easy. And so that is a little thing that just adds organization and dependability. You can't have that line fall off and go back and catch in your prop or 1,000 other bad things that can tangle. So this is a very simple thing that brings a lot of value and makes sailing really, just brings confidence in general. I want to show you another thing up here on the anchor locker, very similar to this, very small thing that just brings a lot of value. Okay, so right here you can see we have this little piece of purple string, that little purple line right there. And what that does is that's how we keep our halyard. So when you're tucking reefs and it's really, really windy, it's good to have a way that you can reliably coil up your halyard and place it. It's not going to fall off or untangle. So this is how this works. You lift it off, it comes straight off, and it's nothing more than just a simple piece of a loop of your desired size line or little string, and you put it back on just like that. So that always gives you a place to put your halyard and prevents it from falling off and getting tangled. On bigger boats, your halyard can fall off and get back in your prop and wind up in your prop, and that's a major situation. You don't want to do that. So little things like that just bring a lot of confidence. When the wind's hitting and the waves are hitting, and you can just reliably do that and walk away, and you know it's going to be secure, that goes a long ways. So these are just little things that bring, again, just bring value. Doesn't seem like much, but in the grand scheme of things, it just adds to your experience. So this is another little piece of line with a hook on the end that you just hook your anchor locker open with it. So whenever you're dropping anchor, this isn't trying to fall over and pinch your toes or pinch your anchor rod and bind your hinges and break your hinges off. And so, you know, if you're out anchoring and it's rough, your anchor lid's trying to fall down all the time, and it just adds another element of discomfort. So little things like that just go a long way and make your overall boating experience more comfortable, and also, like I said 1,000 times, adds to your confidence. Let's keep going, take another look. Okay, another little piece of organization equipment that brings some value is we made this little thing here, and it's kind of nice. There's Lexan in here, so it keeps it from sagging, and it kind of adds a little element of stability. But we throw our main sheet in there just to keep it out of the cockpit, and just, I don't know, it makes it nicer. And you can put your phone in there, your speaker, or whatever you want to do when you're listening to music. But another thing that brings a lot of value. And another thing we did, now this is kind of Precision 23 directed, but not really. All small sailboats are the same. Like, just because you've bought a sailboat doesn't necessarily mean that it's tuned up and it's ready to go and everything on it is perfect. So when we got this sailboat, this tiller that we're looking at right here was like a foot shorter than this tiller that's on here now. And so it was ridiculous. You can't sail like that. You couldn't reach the winches. And they made the tiller short like that because they think it adds more room to the cockpit. It makes the cockpit less cramped. But it makes it ridiculous, so you can't really even sail the boat. So one of the first things we did is we made a real tiller that is the real length. And I just can't say enough of how much it adds value to the boat. So see, I can reach the winch and I can reach the tiller. And if you cannot do that, that simple formula right there is just gonna it's gonna crush your confidence if your tiller's too short and you can't reach. So it's good to have your boat set up right, and this is a good example of one that is set up right, and it's also an example of one that was set up wrong and was unsaleable. But not only was this tiller from Precision was way too short, was also straight, and it comes out straight right through here. And so when you're sailing, it's hitting you in the knees. How are you going to hold this tiller up so it doesn't hit your knees? And then it puts, if you're sailing with the tiller up, which you never should, it puts extra stress on the top of the rudder, and also it's extra stress on your arm. How are you going to hold this tiller up above your knees for hours upon hours upon hours? That's never going to actually work at all. So getting rid of the precision tiller was like one of the first things we did, and making a nice riser tiller. And we've done that to our precision 23 that we're on now, and also our precision 18, same thing. They make a straight tiller, and I get it, it's easier and cheaper for them to make. I'm not talking bad about precision or nothing, but having a real tiller adds real value. Another thing we should move on to is this is another thing that I think it's hard to communicate to folks too. So when you have a boat, you want to use your boat, and you want it to be comfortable, and you want it to be confidence inspiring, like I say all the time, but you want it to have lots of options, and you don't want these options restricted or held back from you so you don't get to take advantage of them. Sunset sails are awesome. They're so much fun. We take sunset sails all the time. Sailing through the night is great. We do that all the time. When you go out sailing, you don't want to feel like, oh, I have to be back before dark, I have to be back, blah, 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 all those things. So you need your running lights to work on the boat, and you need your deck light. So if you want to tuck a reef after dark, you can just hit your deck light, and then you can, whatever you can see in the middle of the night to tuck a reef. It brings tons of confidence. And you need your cabin lights to work. You need your autopilot to work. And so it's another like myth, sort of like confusion thing in the sailing world, where people think you only need a solar panel on a big boat or something, and that is not true. You need a solar panel on all boats almost. So we have a small solar panel. I think this is like 6 watts or 7 watts or something. It's incredibly small. And we have a single deep cycle battery on the boat. And as soon as you put a solar panel to a charge controller to your battery, your power problems are absolutely over from now on. You just don't have any issues. So with this simple rig, one battery, a 7-watt solar panel, and a charge controller, we can charge our phones. We can run our autopilot 24 hours a day. We can have our cabin lights and our running lights 24 hours a day. And we have all the power we would ever need with that simple little investment, and very inexpensive investment, of the smallest solar panel in the world, run to a charge controller, and then to our battery. So that is very, very easy, and it just brings so much, it adds to give you so many options. You can take sunset sails, you can sail all night long, you can use your autopilot, you can charge your speaker, you can charge your phone. It just goes on and on and on and on and on and on. So it's a very small amount of work, but it just brings unlimited value, and we firmly recommend a solar panel and a reasonable 12-volt setup on your boat, because it will definitely benefit and improve your sailing. Anyways, let's keep looking around. So there's also, like, I don't understand this train of thought, but it does plague the sailing world pretty bad, especially small boat sailors, that you only need a GPS on a big boat. You need a GPS on a small boat as well. It's probably one of the main things that really gives you confidence. You always know where you're at. You always know the depth of the water. It just answers every question that produces anxiety whenever you're sailing. And so you can't have one on your boat if you don't have a reasonable 12-volt system, and that's why it's so important to put a small solar panel on your boat. Once you put that solar panel on your boat and that battery and that charge controller, it takes your sailing to a whole nother level. And so we firmly recommend that to any small boat sailor, any sailor of any size boat. Anyways, let's keep looking around. So another thing I think kind of gets overlooked is, and the reason why I'm covering all these topics is because these are the questions we get asked all the time when we're sailing in our local area. And so another thing that kind of gets overlooked is, but it's also very, very important, it should not get overlooked, is you understanding your fuel consumption and having an accurate understanding and creating a mental or a written fuel log, so you know how many gallons per hour. And on small outboards, it's probably going to be somewhere like a quarter to a half a gallon an hour. But you need to know what your fuel consumption is. So when you plan a trip, you know your amount of hours that you can motor, and that's going to allow you to understand at 5 knots the amount of distance you can cover, because you don't want to carry too much fuel, because that's extra weight and that's dumb and that slows you down. But you don't want to carry too little fuel, because that will put you in a situation. So understanding your fuel consumption and knowing accurately what that is can confidently allow you to understand or to know the distance that your boat's capable of traveling with the fuel that you have on board. And knowing that is very, very important. I can't say enough about that either. That's one of those things that boosts your confidence, because you know if there's no wind, or if there's a lot of wind, or it's in the wrong direction, or there's ripping currents, you know what your boat is capable of, and you know how much fuel you have. So understanding your fuel consumption and having a written or a mental fuel log is very, very important. So what we're looking at right here is this piece of Dyneema, and that Dyneema runs from right here from the stern rail, hits a soft shackle, and runs all the way up to that turnbuckle. And what that does is, so Precision arranged their main sheet like this, with this little swivel plate right here. And it's good, and I understand why they did that. Some people don't like that, and I can understand why that it looks a little sketchy. It looks sketchy because it is sketchy. That's why it looks sketchy. But so whenever you're tacking, this swivels back and forth and back and forth, you know, port tack, starboard tack, back and forth. And what it does, and I've had it do it before, where you'll start seeing right here, you'll start seeing little pieces of stainless wire. The cable will start separating and start failing right here, and you'll see these little strings, these little wire things come out of right here, because that's the area that pivots. And so what happens is your backstay gets weakened right there. Well, there's a lot of pressure on your backstay, and you cannot afford to have your backstay fail, because your mast will come down. And you know, like if you're on a lake or something like that, or you're just out on the weekends, it can still happen there too. Don't kid yourself. You can still get thunderstorms, and maybe you never even looked at that area. And there's a lot of sailors that haven't, but there's a lot of sailors that have. But anyway, so this is a critical area. If that fails, your mast can come down. So we put this Dyneema jumper over that. So if this fails, it's going to just tighten up again, and our mast we're not going to lose our mast. So that is something to look at on your Precision. Any of them, the 20s, the 21s, 23s, or 18s, you should always keep an eye on this area right here. If you see any fraying at all, you should change this bridle right here. But so what we did about that is we just added the jumper, and now if it breaks when we're out sailing, it doesn't so much matter. Anyways, let's keep looking around. So earlier, as I was talking about on the reefing stuff, I didn't say that on our mainsail we've added a second reef. And not only did we add the second reef, but we placed it maybe unnaturally high. And the reason is because when the wind really gets up and you're out in the ocean, or you're down on the lower Chesapeake Bay, you need that second reef to really, really count. And now Precision 23s don't come with a second reef. None of the Precisions come with a second reef, as far as I'm aware of. But a second reef is absolute critical equipment. You should have one on any Precision sailboat. You should have one on any small sailboat. A second reef is very, very important. So we put one in here, and we use it all the time. You cannot sail, or we could never sail without it. So if you don't have a second reef, you should consider putting one in. So another thing that really brings a lot of value to us is, and we were lucky when we got this boat, somebody had already made screens for the hatches. And so when you're sailing a small boat, it's nice to have a really protected anchorage. If you're looking for a protected anchorage, you end up very close to shore naturally. And if you're close to shore, there's going to be mosquitoes or gnats or flies. So long story short, screens are really, really good. somebody made these screens, and they did a fairly decent job, so we have not remade them yet. But since we saw their design on our other boats, we've made screens for our other boats, because you need them. You absolutely need them. If you're trying to get sleep after a long day sailing, it's just nice to have the confidence to know that you're not going to get eaten alive by mosquitoes. And any of the fun anchorages and fun things you're going to do sailing, like exploring neat remote beaches, there's going to be mosquitoes there. So anyways, these screens are really, really nice. You can see they just go in really, really easy, blah, 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 so on and so forth. They snap down the outside, and we always just kind of leave that hanging and just climb in and out. And the hatch close over it, so if it's raining, you just slide the hatch right shut. That was a pretty good design. These are kind of old, but they still do the trick. So screens, definitely an absolute must. Okay, so we've kind of showed you some of the things that we've done to our boat to, let me move that diaper out of the way. Having your GPS mounted on a swivel is nice, because when you're down here taking a nap, you can keep an eye on your position and your speed. It's kind of nice to have that. But and also it swings out and you can see it from outside. So anyways, those are just some of the things that we've done to our Precision 23 that bring lots of value and make the boat itself just way more capable. And we as humans, we subconsciously make plans based on our capability. And so if we go out on our boats and we have these little things just robbing our confidence, it's also robbing us of bigger accomplishments when it comes to sailing, because we just don't feel like we're capable of that. But when you just kind of improve your boat and set it up just a little bit better and just add a few of these little things we showed you, it does really enable you to just subconsciously make bigger plans of sailing longer distances and ultimately having more fun with more confidence and less stress and less anxiety and making better memories. So anyways, we love sailing little boats. Remember, it's the big boats take the glory, but it's the small boat that makes the sailor. So we hope this video brings you value, and we'll see you in the next one.
I caught a golden wave. It left me lost at sea. I turned crazy. Wild and away. The ocean was angry. Foaming at the mouth. In the underturning. In the underturning. In the mistakes how you paid and paid and paid for. Sun breaks, but you find